Welcome back to Pit Perspective. I'm your host, Roger Sherman, pitmaster and owner of the District Pit Barbecue Catering Company in Washington, D.C., coming to you from the main kitchen of the O Street Mansion. I've got a really special guest for you today. Ivory Johnson is the founder of Delancey Wealth Management, one of the premier investment groups here in Washington, D.C., also a contributor to CNBC and the former president of 100 Black Men here in Washington, D.C., also my fraternity brother, a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and for some reason, which is completely and totally inexplicable to me, he's been nice enough to be my financial advisor for the better part of a decade. Ivory, welcome to the show.
No, thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on, brother. So this is nominally a food show, so the way you guys know that this works is I have a guest bring on some food, and we try it, they talk about it a little bit, and then we'll get into a couple of things. So Ivory, what do you got for us today, brother?
Well, I have a dish that's got rice that I flavored with a little bit of curry powder. I mixed in some shrimp, and the real key ingredient is going to be apple sausage. It's apple chicken sausage, gives it a nice sweet taste. I also got obviously minced garlic. Garlic goes with everything. Some pesto sauce, and then I have an extra layer of garlic powder, and then of course the chili flakes, so I can get a little bit of a hot seasoning, so that flavor can just sit in your mouth and waffle around until you get your next bite.
I love it. So I'm going to break protocol, and I'm going to go ahead and give this a shot, because this looks and smells delicious, because I'm a shrimp fanatic.
Okay.
That is right on every level. That is perfect on every level.
Yeah.
So tell me how you put it together.
How can I put together a nice dish that doesn't take more than half hour, 45 minutes?
Okay.
And so, and I also like to have as many different flavors as possible so that, you know, all the seasonings come together. And I start with the rice, obviously, I cook that separate. I add that in at the end, but I cover the dish once I put everything in. So I cut up the scallions, I prepare the shrimp, I cut up all the other ingredients, and then I cook them together, but I cover it so that you can get the nice sauce.
Okay.
Okay. So then all of a sudden the garlic and the pesto sauce all gets infused into all the other ingredients. But then the real key is, and I have butter obviously. You can't cook without butter.
Can't cook without butter.
And then
have butter.
But then I put the rice in, and then the rice soaks up all the good flavors. And so every bite you get all the flavors from all the ingredients. And that's how I put it together.
Delancey Wealth Management, your own business.
Yes.
Previous to that, you were doing financial advising for bigger companies, larger firms.
Yep.
How did you get into that, and how did you get to where you are now?
So the reason I got into investing is my godmother gave me a book about stocks and bonds when I was like 10, 11 years old. And I thought it was fascinating how one thing impacts the other, and how the whole business of economic growth and how those things impact the way people live and their quality of life. And so I just enjoyed it. I majored in finance. I did the cold calling, so if you remember the Wolf of Wall Street, I worked for that company.
Sure.
We found a $19 stock, we think it's 27, 28, in like 60, 90 days. The name of the company is Kmart. So I did that for a while. But eventually the industry changed. Wayne Gretzky talks about don't skate to where the puck is, skate to where the puck is going to be. So my industry has evolved from cold calling to selling mutual funds to fee-based management to comprehensive financial planning and being a consultant. So I did to your point, I did the first year I was a trust officer, working with high net worth individuals. Then I worked for a boutique firm.
I want to jump back on that.
Yes.
He said he's working with high net worth individuals.
Well, I worked with, yeah, that's what I did.
But he also works with me.
Yes.
That's all I wanted to say. He works with high net worth individuals
Right.
and me. So go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, but that was the previous life. And then I did, I did Charles Schwab, and I worked for a boutique financial planning firm as the director of financial planning. But ultimately for me, I decided to make my life look exactly the way I wanted it to look. I wasn't interested in a corporate card, in $1,000 suits. I did all that. I wasn't interested in, having, billion-dollar clients. I said, what do I want my life to look like? I want flexibility. Okay, I want to be able to go visit see my son when he runs track, when he plays the violin. I want to do some community service, right? I didn't want to be in a big operation. How do I make that happen? And the way I did it, I said, well, I'm going to create my life the way I want it to look. I'm going to keep it small. And that gives me the opportunity to work with people who may not be, multi-millionaires. Although I have a lot of clients who have many millions of dollars, I've created the life to look that if I want to go out and play golf on a Wednesday at 4 o'clock, I can do it. And it's been incredibly fulfilling. It's been financially rewarding, and I would do it anyway. And it sounds like something you're doing as well.
Working toward it.
That's correct.
Working toward it. So the difficult hurdle for me in my business over the course of the last year is the pivot that I had to make from catering to doing something else like individual platters in order to continue to maintain my business. We all know what we're talking about, what happened in 2020. I won't go into it in great detail. How did that affect your business? And did it at all? I would make the assumption that in the pandemic, people had to use your services more than they normally would have because the stock was changing and etc. I don't have, that type of business. My type of business, I was on the ropes. How did that affect you, and how did you make the pivot if you had to?
Yeah, it did really affect me because, we would come into the office and we would discuss, different matters, but there's this thing called Zoom.
Right.
And so I discovered something that made my job actually more efficient, because now I could have Zoom meetings with clients or prospects without them having to come in. And it made everything so much more efficient. With respect to the market, remember the market dropped 30%.
Sure, I felt that.
And so, right, but we came right back, right?
Yes.
So, and January's been phenomenal. But that gives me a leg up. In other words, everybody can get advice for free. They can go on the apps. They're looking at the financial news networks. So everybody's a genius when the market goes up 2-3% a month. When the market drops 30%, all of a sudden they start to see the value. Because then what I'm doing is I'm making sure that they're not too emotional. They're not selling low and then buying high. And then they begin to, and once you establish that value, then your clients appreciate what you've been doing for them over the years.
When I was starting my business years ago, not that long ago, a couple years ago, I came to you, we had some discussions. You pointed me in a positive direction and helped me thrive. Somebody walks into you today. We just came out of one of the most difficult years in human history, or at least during our lifetimes. Somebody walks into your office today and says, Ivory, I want to start a new business. What's the first thing you're going to tell them?
Well, that is not easy.
Okay.
Because what happens is people will look at me and go, wow, he's got his own business. I want that. But they don't realize
all the stuff behind it.
That's correct.
Right.
The same thing with you. So you've been doing this for a few years. So you didn't just all of a sudden jump up and have a YouTube channel.
No, I did not.
You did not just jump up and all of a sudden have people, purchasing your food on a regular basis, where you could pivot from doing a catering to having people buy your food. That happened over a number of years. So that's the first thing I say, is it's not easy and it will take years. In most instances, take years. Second thing is, you're gonna make mistakes. Just don't make the big ones. Don't make the big ones where you're out of business before you get into business. And the other thing is, it's really important that you have some savings. So what you don't want is to just jump out there and start a business and not have the funds to maintain it. That's the number one reason businesses go under, is because they don't have the capital to keep carrying on so that they can make it off, the running.
What's the biggest mistake people make when they're starting?
So I think, and listen, there's a lot of them. People spend too much money right away. When you start a business, you become a target.
Yeah.
Because they know business owners make decisions. But it's when people do things just to make money. They start a business, I'm going to make a lot of money doing this business. They don't have the expertise, they don't have the network, and most importantly, don't have the passion. Okay? And so when you start a business like you've done, this has to be something you really enjoy doing. Because when times get bare, you need the impetus to want to get up in the morning and keep moving.
Right. What's the biggest mistake you made starting your business?
I got a big office. I had the money, I had the clients. I was like, I want the big office, and the nice window. And
that is great.
And I realized after a year, I was doing my taxes. I said, why are you spending this much money on an office when most of the time you're on the phone with your clients?
Yeah.
And that was it.
Okay.
That was it. I said, okay, let me just start to scale down, wasting money that I don't need. It looks great. You got the couch and the 2 chairs. It's
sure.
But I just didn't need it. And that was probably one of the biggest mistakes I made. And then biting off more than I can chew. I'm glad I did it in retrospect. Sometimes you think you make a mistake and God goes, I'll get you on the back end. So I've been incredibly blessed. I can't complain as far as people starting a business. It's been relatively smooth, but yeah, you're always going to make mistakes. Just don't make them.
Sure. You're the former president of 100 Black Men in Washington, D.C. You're also a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, which I am as well. That's how we're associated with each other. Tell me a little bit about your passion for community service and the things that you like to do most in the community.
Well, it came about because we know the conditions in our community, right?
Yeah.
And so
everybody who's unaware or is new to the show, we're in Washington, D.C. This is Ivory's from New York, so I'm from DC, so we kind of grew up in similar worlds, so we're reaching back to similar types of people.
Right, because in fact, Delancey Street is where I grew up. So I'm from the Lower East Side.
I was going to ask you that, why it was named that way.
Right. So I'm from the Lower East Side. There's Alphabet City, as you get older, you start reflecting back on all those guys who weren't able to make the journey with you. And most of the time, they were a whole lot smarter than I was. A lot smarter, a lot more athletic than I was. But circumstances were different. My dad and my mom were together, and they sent me to... So, if you know New York, you could live across the street from Bedlam. And your neighborhood, your block, rather, is in perfect condition. And that was my experience, where I had everything, set up for me. But once I crossed the street, it was
different world.
It was a different world, right? And so I saw those guys, and it always was in the back of my mind. I always knew I was blessed. And then I start to see the other $80 billion prison industry. And then I start to see the states are getting paid to keep the prison beds 70 to 90% full. And then I see that we're getting arrested 3 and 4 times the rate as other demographics, even though every other demographic buys and sells drugs at the same rate that we do. And I start to realize that we're pred. You can be predator or you can be prey. And I can say, well, I can either complain about it, or I can do something about it. And that was my impetus. And what I like to do, and that's where we met, is mentoring kids.
Yes.
Because a lot of times, they don't even know that we exist. And one of the things I try to tell them is, so they see, he's on CNBC, and how can I be like him? And the best thing I can tell them is, I'm not even that smart, right? I just made certain decisions. I had certain advantages, and just knowing what is possible, oftentimes is the impetus they need to move forward and get out of their predicament.
Mentoring the youth. Like when you grew up kind of like we did, you see a lot of terrible things, you experience a lot of terrible things, and what you kind of want to do is expose your mentee to those things so that they're aware of them, and at the same time kind of help them avoid those things. And that's all we're out there, looking to do. Next phase of your life, you can be a financial advisor for as long as you want to. You've got your own business. But if you were going to do something else, what would be the next step?
I'd probably write.
Okay.
I write articles for the network. I write articles for my business that's on my website. I write poetry and spoken word. So all of that stuff would be. I would love to write a book if I had the time to sit down and put my thoughts on the paper. What I would write about, I'm not entirely sure.
I was going to say nonfiction. Would it be business related, or would you try to put something together nonfiction? Is there something deep inside your brain you like to just put out?
No, it would probably be something finance related.
Okay.
But it would be a lot about, using finance to make yourself happy. So traditionally what happens in my business is we say, well, Roger, when do you want to retire? Oh, 65. And what number do you need? And then we work towards that.
Right.
What I'll tell you though is I've had clients retire and then become depressed.
Okay.
And you say, well, how could that be? Well, you go from Bob in the corner office with the $2,000 parachutes, and the interns have to be nice to you because you're Bob in the corner office, right? And your wife comes to the office, and everybody has to be nice to your wife because she's the wife of Bob in the corner office, right? And everyone sees you, and then you leave, and then you become Bob, who can't find a 3/16" drill bit at Home Depot. Your whole sense of purpose is gone. You didn't go into golf trips because you had to make sure you had to guard that corner office with everything that you had.
Right.
You didn't go on fishing trips anymore. You didn't go on girls' weekends. So all the things that will connect you and make you happy, your social circle, your family, you may not have as close a ties to that because you spent so much time on your career.
So if you had to give us today one stock tip, what would it be?
You want a company that's disruptive in nature, that's doing something that the rest of its peer groups aren't doing. that in a year, 2, 3 years, they're going to have a significant leg up because of, not just legislative, but just they've got recurring revenue, but their business idea puts other people out of business. It's just creative disruptive. Joe Shishunto, so a good example would be what you saw with Amazon and Google. They just disrupted the whole industry. What you see with Zoom, that's why Zoom is just, I don't know if it's going to keep going, but it disrupted the whole industry. You're seeing it in cryptocurrency where it's just different. And for a lot of different reasons, it's disrupting, what we consider to be a store of value. So I'm not advocating for or against those things. I'm saying that they have the same, criteria that you would want in an investment going long term. And the second thing I'd say is you want to have a lot of different eggs in the basket. So, there are going to be people who say, well, the world's coming to an end, I'm going to buy gold. Well, what happens if the world doesn't end?
Okay, right.
So you really want to sparse it out where you've got, technology, and you've got, maybe infrastructure companies, and you don't want to have a lot of oil companies if we have inflation. You want to have a lot of different things. And the last thing I'll leave you with is you want to take into account where we are. And what happens is people get their asset allocation and they don't change. They just keep it the same way because they think large, mid cap, small cap, gives them diversification. What really gives you diversification is different asset classes that are relevant for the current macroeconomic environment. Is GDP growth accelerating or decelerating? Is inflation accelerating or decelerating? And based on that, there are certain asset classes that will do better than others. And so that's what I would do, is make sure that you're dressed appropriately for the current economic climate.
Ivory, tell people how they can find you.
Well, you can find me on ivoryjohnson.com, delanceywealth.com. They both go to the same website because everybody can't spell Delancey because it has an E after the C. And I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn as well.
I didn't want to have to do this, but I'm going to have to embarrass you.
All right.
So I didn't tell you this was coming, but this is where we're at. So years ago, I walked into this man's office as a client of his, and he set me up with some things. And then after about a year, I walked back in and said, Ivory, I've got 2 girls that I've got to send to college, and they're going to be in there in 5 or 6 years, and I have no college savings. I'm not going to tell you all the things that we went through, but on my oldest daughter's first day of college, and I've told this to people before, on my oldest daughter's first day of college, I had enough money to pay for her first 2 years. That day I could have written that check. And this man made it happen. So thank you for that.
I appreciate it.
I would tell that to anybody. If you need a financial advisor, again, look up Ivory Johnson. He can make some things happen for you. Thank you for being on the show. You've been a terrific guest. Thanks again for the O Street Mansion for hosting us here in their executive kitchen. You can check us out at Pitt Perspective on YouTube, or you can find me on Instagram at District Pitt, or on Facebook at The District Pitt. And we appreciate it, and we hope to see you again.